We're starting a new series this week. For the next few weeks, we'll be doing some painting in coffee shops and cafes around Boston. We're at Cafe Nero today, which is in downtown Boston. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to start today. What do we do in the field to render this sort of motif? It's a complex motif because there's movement throughout the time that you're painting, and lots of things are happening. And you're surrounded by people, you feel self-conscious, but it's, take your sketchbook or even a small watercolor kit, and you can sit and enjoy a cup of coffee and catch this atmosphere that's in the coffee shop. Usually they're nice places, comfortable places to be with beautiful light, and many of them have a unique character. This is true of Nero. As you see me painting now, what I'm going to talk about today and trying to demonstrate here with a single color is catching the inanimate shapes, the shapes that are not moving. And of course, there's many of them, probably too many for our painting. I've focused on a couple of chairs and a mirror in the back, a light towards the center of the painting, and the fireplace on the right-hand side. On each side of the fireplace are some bookshelves that I'm really indicating very loosely. But if you look at it now, you can see those inanimate shapes coming out. And they're very flat now. There's not any life to them, but it's an important stage because it helps you to compose, and it helps you to prepare for figures or to even prepare for the lighting. So what I recommend, and this is the way that I'm familiar with, is to sketch or place with a light color these large inanimate shapes first, shapes that are going to occupy your paper, and they help you to kind of set the composition, and they're going to guide you as to where to throw shadows or where to place your figures, the proportion of your figures, cups, plates. All of that stuff is going to fit into these first shapes that you place. And that's what you see me doing now, is I'm starting to think about how the figures are going to complement the scene. I'm not putting a lot of figures in, certainly not as many as you saw in the initial photograph, but enough to make it feel busy and enough to kind of satisfy our feeling that this is a place where people come to relax and chat and enjoy, a kind of respite in their day. What I'm doing now is placing the light, actually. I'm painting shadows, but by creating these shadows, I definitely create a source of light or a feeling of light in the scene. And this is important for any interior because the light is usually minimal. Sometimes we're near a window and we get a bright light, but often we're not, and the overhead lighting is usually subdued, and it's something that's important in creating that kind of warm, cozy feeling that you feel in the cafe, is this quiet light, and I'm creating that by using shadows. So you see a big shadow up above that's common in these coffee shops, and at Nero they have a very high ceiling and a beautiful lighting, which I'm going to put in towards the end. But I'm generating the mood. I feel I'm generating the mood by establishing this big shadow overhead. As I come down to my main figures, my center of interest, in particular, the woman who's seated at the chair, I'm painting around her with the idea that this is a dark chair, a big soft chair that you can kind of melt into, and kind of outlining her figure with the color of the chair. Also, I'm placing some shadows very roughly in the bookcase, on the lamp to her left, There's a chair. I'm inventing a chair here in the front to kind of push in against the midground so that the fireplace is visible but not taking over the scene. And all this work now is adding shadows, starting to add shadows to those flat, big shapes that were placed initially. There's another chair. Not sure, it's very comfortable. You can tell the the person sitting in it, who's not developed yet, is a gentleman who's reading the newspaper. Another common scene in cafe culture. And we'll deal more with the types of poses that we see and the types of interactions that we see in coffee shops in next week's tutorial. But today, we're making our first start, and we're going to be painting in the field, so I encourage you to look for those simple shapes in the beginning. The simple shapes, maybe not so simple. We can make them simple by thinking how they are simple geometrically. Most of these shapes are actually rectangles. And if we place those simple shapes first, we can certainly make them more ornate as we refine the image. But in placing these shapes, we get a feeling of their proximity and how they are unified. And this is important to get a good start with your piece. You notice that the dark I've been using is already unifying the midground very strongly, and that was my intention, is to have these shapes of chairs, the mantle on the fireplace, the lamp, the figures, the coffee table, be rather dark. And the background is going to be rather mid-tone. And the tone up above is going to be dark. So actually the mid-tone in this painting is quite dark. The dark accents will be at key positions, and then there'll be some large white areas that I'm going to try and use to highlight the subject. In the field, I also recommend working with a single color. You see me using I believe it's a Van Dyke brown, maybe with a little bit of burnt sienna, but it's a warm color, and that warm color gives a warmth to the scene too. So if I develop this into a color image, I would lean towards the warm tones in most of the work. And yeah, it's starting to come out, but I'm a little disappointed with the background. I feel it's faded off more than I like. So I'll probably return to that after I develop my characters on my stage. After I develop that, I'll return to the background and do a few things. But this is not a bad way to think about your painting in the way that a theater person might envision it. And this is not only for interiors, but or any kind of urban scene, even landscapes. In the theater, the director, the stage person is very much thinking about where the audience should focus. Usually on the main characters, and there might be other characters in the scene, but they're sort of like the chorus, the old Greek chorus. They're in the background, they're present, and they're giving a context. But there are main figures, and the main figures sort of tell us a story of what's happening in the scene. It could be something really casual, like we see these people seem unconnected in their own world. It could be something more between two people, a conversation, or it could be a group thing as well. There's all sorts of possibilities. And if you sit long enough in these cafes, and believe me, I've done a lot of research. I just love to go to these cafes and sit and sketch, enjoy the mood that's there. Different stories unfold, and these become material for us. Now the painting is gaining light right now. Those darks have kind of solidified, and you can almost feel the firelight dancing in the fireplace. The light that's generated by that fireplace is coming directly out towards our figures. There are overhead lights, and in addition to those overhead lights, that dark shadow, I retouched it and it looks a little better. Let's see how it dries. But at this stage, the painting is actually presenting the finished feel that we want. We need to refine a few things. For example, I'd like to put some highlights at the end of the painting. And, well, I'm returning to that dark shadow. Look at that. Oh, I'm taking a leap of faith here. We'll see what happens. I like to do that in painting. If I feel that something is dried a little pale, I'm not shy about darkening it, and with the result, with the intention, with the hope of getting the mood that I want. For me, in painting, the mood that's created by all of this is sort of the intangible part, that it's created by many things. And, well, here's the finished piece. And I'm glad that I put that dark up in the upper part. It helps me with the decorative lighting that came at the end. The figures, have readable quality. You can see the distant figures receding towards the back wall. Came out to my expectation.